Resistance Management School on realagriculture.com is brought to you by CropLife Canada.
Albert, you've been telling growers about the potential for fungicide resistance in eastern Canada for several years. At what level do we currently see resistance in fungicides?
Yeah, so when it comes to resistance in fungicides, there's been an increase in awareness of it. A lot of that has resulted from what we're seeing on the herbicide side in Ontario. We're starting to see more and more fungicide resistant instances in the US, whether it's frog eye leaf spot or some of the other corn pathogens as well. So we're starting to see an increase in that. Fortunately, in Ontario, we still do not have any documented cases of fungicide resistance in our field crops in that. So it is a new area for us of concern. It's one that we were looking at and we're evaluating. But the good news right now is that we are not there yet, but it is something we need to be out there assessing and being aware, and all producers need to be aware of the potential for fungicide resistance.
Albert, for growers, what indicators should they be on the alert for, and indicators that they may have fungicide resistance in a crop?
The most obvious is you've identified a problem, you identified a disease of interest, for instance, you go ahead and say you apply a foliar fungicide or a seed treatment, for instance, and you're not getting that level of control that maybe historically you have. So where you would manage it in the past quite effectively, now maybe it's requiring one or two or subsequent applications, more applications of that same fungicide or product to get that same level of control or no level of control. That is a big, big red flag. And that is probably the most common question we get or concern is that, hey, why are things changing? I'm not getting the level of control that I used to. So be aware, that'll be your first indication that you've got a problem in your field.
Albert, when it comes to managing fungicide resistance, you talk about BMPs, best management practices, and you always start with, agronomic practices to promote healthy plants.
Oh yeah, it's critical. And one of the most important aspects of that is trying to put the plant in a position where it can defend itself in best possibility against multiple different pathogens or diseases, and they change from year to year. So that's also important to keep in mind. So we start off with getting the right germplasm, right? So if we know that we've had a history of northern corn leaf blight in a field, for instance, you want a selective variety or a hybrid in this particular case that is tolerant or resistant to northern corn leaf blight. So take what you've learned from this year, previous years, and apply it to future, to next year's crop or this year's crop as well. So planting a resistant or tolerant variety is key for, regardless of what disease we're talking about. Cultural practices that can promote early establishment, planting date, planting into good fit conditions if possible. Some years, like 2019, it was really difficult. We were always 1 or 2 days away from planting into fit conditions. And that can have a consequence as well. But if you set yourself up, those rarities or oddities, you can prevent or reduce the risk of those impacting the overall plant health occurring that year as well. So cultural practices such as maintaining or reducing residues where a lot of these pathogens are harbor, removing excess moisture that allows a lot of, say, the oomycetes, those phytophthora, pythiums, those soil-borne pathogens from establishing early on. All of those things can aid in reducing your overall risk and using your BMPs to help reduce your risk for diseases that year.
You also talk about the need to evaluate disease control.
Oh, absolutely. So in that, it all starts with scouting, right? You've got to be out there. You've got to know what diseases are occurring. So if we've got a bacterial disease versus, say, a northern corn leaf blight, a fungal pathogen, if you're targeting a bacterial disease with, say, a fungicide, it's not going to work because they're not meant to manage fungal pathogens. So it starts with scouting and proper identification so that you know what you're aiming for and you can get the product that is best suited for that. So efficacy is important. There are multiple. We're seeing more and more fungicide products coming to market that are targeting many broader pathogens. We call those broad spectrum fungicide products, but we're also starting to see targeted products as well. Ones that are targeting, say, nematodes or targeting Sundance syndrome or just white mold and all those. So that's also important. So are you in the need of looking for a product that is broad spectrum? Or are you looking for those ones where we don't have a lot of options, but we are starting to see more targeted products as well? So you can't manage a disease if you don't know what you're looking for.
The final thing you always talk about is the need to select fungicides strategically.
Oh, absolutely. So, in many cases, a field crop producer versus a hort producer, different perspective in many cases. So if you're on a calendar schedule or a weekly fungicide program or so, there you're rotating your products from week to week. And that's a way to minimize resistance or reduce the risk of any development of a tolerance or resistance to that product. On the field crop side of things, where we're maybe only applying, in most cases, you're applying one fungicide at one opportunity during that season. So instead of rotating your individual products, what we're doing is we're combining those products. So you're having mixed modes of action. So in many cases, you're starting to see in the previous where you had one fungicide now, or one active ingredient in there, now we're looking at 2 and 3, these multi-mix products. And that, because of those different modes of actions, that reduces the selection pressure on the pathogens or the fungi or diseases that are out there, and that reduces your overall risk and slows down the potential development of any resistant isolates out there.